Welcome to another brand new episode of CPOV Autographs. I, of course, am Matt, aka Stormageddon. And before we get to this week's episode, I have some business to discuss up front. For those who are not aware or who are not currently patrons, I just wanted to let those listening know that I have shut down my Patreon. And there were a lot of reasons for it. The gist was I just felt like I wasn't fulfilling the bonus material to my promised capacity. There was a lot of understanding that you get shout outs and there were stickers and t-shirts and stuff, but I also promised additional audio content, additional video content. And unfortunately, with producing 8 podcasts, hosting 4 podcasts, Twitch streaming, I've kind of run out of time to do the extra stuff. So I made a decision to shut down my Patreon. Now, I also want to thank my patrons who were with me to the end, anyone who gave at any point. I really do appreciate that. I hope that you'll give in other places, but otherwise, there's no pressure for that. I appreciate everything you did. There were moments where you literally helped keep the lights on, and I am endlessly thankful for that. Now, that doesn't mean you can't support me. If you still do want to support me financially to help improve this podcast and the other stuff that I make, there are plenty of other ways to do that. The best place to go is djstormageddon.com, and I have links to everything. I have a Ko-fi if you want to give me something through that, buy me a cup of coffee. You can also go to my Twitch page, which is www.twitch.tv/DJ_Stormageddon and subscribe to my channel there. That also goes right into my pocket. Or you can go to my merch store. I have t-shirts, stickers, tote bags, mugs. All of that stuff goes right into my pocket and allows me to then use that money to improve this show and all of the other podcasts that I work on, as well as my streaming. I cycle that right back in. So anything that you want to do to help in that way, I greatly appreciate, but is of course not required. Honestly, a rating, a review, a subscribe on your favorite podcast platform is a huge help, especially for this podcast as I try and grow the audience. So if you've got a moment, go to the Apple Podcast Store, rate it 5 stars, and write a kind review. That really, really helps a lot. All right. Enough business up top. Let's get to the party in the back. My guest is the incredible Leo Wiggins. He's a voice actor, a streamer, a podcaster, an incredibly joyous and delightful individual with a very sexy voice. I'm really excited to have him on. We've worked together on a bunch of projects. We've also been friends for quite some time through the internet, and it was just a genuine delight to chat with him. He does such cool work. He's such an incredible person, and I'm really excited to share our conversation with all of you. So without further ado, here is me and the brilliant Leo Wiggins. I'm really excited to have you on the show. My guest today is the incredible voice actor, streamer, actor, singer, pretty much a guy who could do literally anything. It's the incredible Leo Wiggins. Leo, thank you for chatting with me.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. And, no pressure.
No, nothing at all. I'll just go build you up and build you up.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you on the show, which I'm just annoyed I didn't think of it sooner because we've worked on so many other things together over the last year or so. I feel like you were someone I barely knew, and then since the pandemic, we've become pretty good friends through the internet, which is how this kind of works now. But you did an episode of Side Quest, we worked on the Kestrel Tavern together, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then of course you do a bajillion things on your own. It's been really great getting to know you over these last few years. And I guess let's start with the voice acting, because that is what I'd say your main gig is probably the voice acting. It's a cheesy question, ask folks how they get into voice acting. And also the fact that you're talking to one of the internet's premier voice actor nerds. I'm that annoying guy that when we're watching any anime, I'll go, oh, there's Steve Bloom, and then there's this guy, and then there's that guy. I know everything Rob Paulson's ever done because I'm just that guy. But did you grow up as a kid watching cartoons and going, that's a cool thing, I want to do that?
Never, not once. I'm one of those. I mean, again, the more voice actors you listen to in their interviews, the more people you find like this. But it wasn't something I really thought of as something that people did. And of course I watched Dragon Ball Z and Digimon and Sailor Moon and Code Lyoko I was talking to a friend about recently.
Oh, man.
All these crazy cartoons and anime from the 90s and like early 2000s. And I love them to death. And I was playing video games from about 96 was when I started getting into like console video games that really felt like big productions. And, it really didn't occur to me until much, much, much later. And even then it was kind of like, well, maybe. But fast forward to, I've been doing it for a while now, and it's pretty great.
What I really love is the diversity of stuff you've done, but also not only just like anime and narration, but you've also been in video games. And one of my favorite things not that long ago was I was really excited. So we both stream, and we're going to talk about your streaming in a minute. But like I've been getting excited because I've gotten to a point as a streamer where people will reach out. I have some minor connections in the games industry, and so like I can get some review codes for stuff. And I remember posting on Twitter that I was going to play my first impressions of Summer in Mara, and you're like, "Oh, excellent!" Because I'm in that game, but I'm not going to tell you where. You have to find me, and it was really cool to discover the characters you play. What's the process like for that stuff, especially for like, say, a lot of indie games? Is it auditions? Do they come to you? Are you on a file? Like, how does that work for booking those kinds of gigs?
Man, it's such a mixed bag. I mean, the sort of tried and true method, beyond, of course, like agencies and smaller non-union agencies that would have you on file and send you auditions as they come up. There are pay-to-play websites where you spend a few $100s a year, and that's like an all-purpose audition board for voice actors. And, I think the clients who post their jobs to those websites of course they listen to the auditions, so they are selecting. But, a $400 membership fee is a barrier of entry for people who maybe don't take it as seriously. So I do imagine compared to like, you'll see auditions posted on Twitter sometimes, and those are great. But I've talked to game developers who, got in touch with me because of a connection, and they said, man, I posted this open audition on Twitter. I got 2,000 responses and was just going, like, causing hearing damage, listening to just over and over and over and just not finding what I was looking for. And so there are a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of my success has been the clients that I've worked with in the past have generally been pretty happy with me, and it seems pretty willing to put my name out there or bring me back for another gig or, whatever it is. So it's such a mixed bag though. It's crazy.
I have to imagine. And it's funny too. I can already imagine some of our listeners I have plenty of listeners who I know will be familiar with you as well as me, but like I get a lot of compliments online that I have a broadcaster voice. And like you were one of those people that when I first met you, I went, oh my God, his voice is so smooth. Like it's the only voice I've heard that's so naturally deeper than mine. And it was just one of those things. I think it was Caleb probably who commented once when we were recording the Kestrel Tavern, just like the two of you, it's like butter. Sweet Caleb. I love the Kestrel Tavern. I still can't believe I got to play your best friend who was a monk in a tavern for half a year. It was so cool.
That was fun.
Yeah, I want to shout that out a little bit. I loved Caleb worked so hard on that, and it came out so good. My question for you when getting involved with that, because I know when Caleb came to me, he's like, I know you like D&D. I know you haven't done a ton of VO, but you're a podcaster. Would you be interested in this thing? What attracted me to it was this idea that it wasn't like we weren't playing a regular D&D campaign. We weren't trying to ape what the existing actual play shows were doing. We were doing something a little different. The fact that it was a tavern was really interesting. Do you remember how Caleb came to you with it? How he brought up this project?
Yeah, I mean, he was telling me that, like, have you heard of, this was sort of his pitch for me. Have you heard of Dungeons and Dragons? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, great. Have you listened to D&D podcasts? And I'd heard of like Critical Role and some of the really, really big ones. And he asked me, again, I might be kind of half fabricating this. So if Caleb, you listen to this, my bad for not having perfect recall on this conversation. But my general impression was such that he positioned this as a short form D&D style campaign modeled around the sitcom Cheers. And it was such a wacky idea. The idea of like, we're in a bar for every adventure. and it's like unruly tavern guests and, drinking competitions where people are rolling dexterity saves. And like, it was such a weird idea. And honestly, I've been next to the D&D world for a long time. My first job was at a retail store. It was a board game and like hobbyist shop in Berkeley, California, where we sold like Warhammer and board games and puzzles and frisbees and Pokemon cards and, every like fun, nerdy, geeky thing you can imagine, and would have like nightly giant D&D like campaigns that would come in and use the back kind of playrooms. And I had friends who did it. I just never had myself, because it always seemed so intimidating to have such a long process. And especially these days, I am very busy, and my schedule is kind of all over the place. So the idea of something much smaller and also something I didn't have to do a ton of work for was just perfect. And I'm so glad I did it, because we had some like genuinely incredible moments on camera and everything, but also I think just as humans involved in this project together. And it was fun to get to know Emmett and to be Jonas, the surly older barkeep. It was just fun. It's fun.
It was a really interesting way to engage in D&D. I've been playing D&D since I was in high school, but
cool.
I'd never done anything like this before. And also, like, I'm not a metagamer. I don't overanalyze D&D. I don't study the books. Like, if I make a character, I make them within the best of my ability. And then, like, if I need help, I'll ask a friend. But for the most part, I don't try and metagame it too much. But what I loved about Emmett and what I loved about this story is that Caleb was game for anything. Like he said, I can create my backstory. I can do as much as I want. He's got this idea for the world and for the adventurers that this bar is based on and stuff. But if I wanted to create a personal story for Emmett, I could. And so I created this really lovely queer story about this prince and his husband and how they couldn't be together and how I helped them escape. And like, he was just gung-ho the whole time. He was like, there was never the typical like nerdy, like, ew. Like he's just the sweetest guy, Caleb. And so he was just gung-ho and we made a great story. And then we had incredible guests like Case, who played the prince, and MJ from my other podcast came on, and folks from Lore Party came on. Like it was just brilliantly done, and I'm really proud it's out there on the YouTube Spaces. That's what they call it, right? The YouTube Spaces.
Yeah, that's what the kids call it. Kids. I think the YouTube is bussin'. I think that's the.
Going back to the voice acting thing, I want to talk a little bit about your character creation, because you played a huge variety of characters, and some have had close to your voice, and others you've fabricated more wildly. What is that creation process like? Is it always direction by the creator? Do they give you the freedom to kind of play with it? Like, how do you find these characters?
Yeah, I mean, every job has its own requirements, and what you find as an actor, first and foremost, is that if you were to ask me to be authentically vulnerable and maybe frustrated that someone lied to me and I'm confronting them, I know how Leo is going to sound in that situation, and I know how my voice is going to react to the emotions in my body, and all of that I know very, very well. And so although it can feel sometimes a little boring, a lot of the characters that I end up booking are very close to my natural voice, because I do a lot of horror video games, and in those games, they're requiring that you show rage and anger and sadness and a lot of very like dark but very real human emotions. And if I put on some crazy accent, it would very quickly lend itself to maybe sounding disingenuous. Now, that is not to say there are voice actors out there who are vocal chameleons, right? Like, and this especially as sort of someone who loves learning about the voice actors and what they do. Some guys, like, D. Bradley Baker, you would never know that it's him. And just as a fun side note for everybody, if anybody here listening has watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, you've seen it.
Yeah,
right?
Of course. I love that show.
Yeah, so D. Bradley Baker is the voice of Appa, the sky bison, Momo, the little lemur, but also the river people guy who sings Secret Tunnel. And the fact that no one knows that.
Yeah.
Like, when I tell people, people genuinely lose their minds. He's very, very good at kind of inhabiting a wholly different vocal apparatus and fully living through that. That's just not something, my background's in choral singing. So I had some voice control, but acting through an accent or acting through some crazy voice placement is something I'm still kind of working on. So a lot of characters, when I look at like Receiver 2 or my characters in the Blair Witch Project or the Dread X collections, those are all very nearly just me in these sort of imagined circumstances. And it is still hard. It is still hard to get a script. You have a general understanding of the circumstances. You hit record. You're in a cramped booth, and you have to really sell that something's happening and that you're there to And I don't always do it right. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. But, one of the weirdest character voices I did was Verk from AFK Arena. And he's like this tiny rat bandit. And it felt weird to like, I'm a tiny rat bandit. Like that just didn't feel right. It felt like completely the wrong voice. And so for that audition, I did something a little crazier. And as it turns out, I kind of hit the target the person was looking for, and they booked me for it. But, that was also, again, in this sort of hysterical vocal placement, how do I channel that desire for them to succumb to my power in combat or whatever the, acting impulse is? For better or for worse, I mean, Summer and Mara, my characters in that game don't even say words. Yeah. So when we talk about like, how did you go about building the character of Edigan? It's like, well, I mostly went, oh, as people came into the store. It's like, I did think about it, but it was probably a good, like 20-minute process of, okay, I'm this kind of character. What sound would I make? What feels right? And then how do I channel myself through that?
Well, since you brought up Verk, and one of the characters that I was familiar with before coming on the call tonight, and you mentioned that it is one of the crazier ones that you do, can we have a little bit of Verk right now for the listener?
Yeah, sure. Let me just adjust my gain. Okay. Yes, that's it. Die! I think that's still peaked.
Excellent. I love it.
That sort of thing. Yeah. So, just like my normal morning voice. When I wake up, that's how I greet my friends and family.
You just rage against them and yell things until they run.
That's why I don't have any roommates right now. They all ran away.
Right. You scared them away with your weird voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what always got me obsessed with voice acting is just the idea that one person could do so many different things. Like I mentioned pre-show Rob Paulson, who is one of my favorites, who has done a million things. And my favorite thing to blow people's minds would be like, the guy who did the mouse who said Narf a lot? That was also Raphael, who was also Donatello, who was also Yakko. And they're like, what? I love that you can kind of blow people's mind. It's my favorite with Stephen Bloom also is to go, yeah, you know him as Spike Spiegel, you know him as all these different characters, but did you know he's Grunt in Mass Effect? Because that's not his normal voice, because a lot of his characters sound
I don't know that I knew that.
He's Grunt in Mass Effect in the second game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
And I love that surprise. And I think that's something that you can get from voice acting that you can't get from on-screen acting, which I also love. But like, there are some character transformations as far as makeup and special effects or whatever else. But like in animation, you can just do so much more.
Yeah. Definitely some people have had, there's a great documentary, and I'm sure you've seen it, but for anybody listening, there's a fantastic documentary called I Know That Voice.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's made by John DiMaggio, who's the voice of Bender and Jake the dog. And he's in, I think his name is Marcus in Gears of War.
Correct, yeah.
He's great. And he put together this movie, and it's so much fun. But they talk about in that movie, being a voice actor, you can play characters that you never could have played before. Crispin Freeman talks a lot about it, where he still looks like 20. Like, if you look a picture of Crispin Freeman, he looks so young. And then you hear him, and he's got this, like, deep, regal voice. And he always talked about how vocally he'd be cast as, like, the king, the, judge, the powerful person. But visually, he'd be cast as, like, the young squire. And that juxtaposition isn't always comfortable as an actor. At different times, I've voiced, like, demon lords, which is fun, and also like tiny kittens. And that's just a variety of roles and circumstances and, mannerisms that, not that I'm not really interested in being on camera, but that I wouldn't really have access to. I don't know how much people would buy a 6'4" Scottish man as a tiny gray kitten. It would take a lot of makeup.
I mean, it worked for Cats, right? They made a whole movie about it.
Did it? Did it work for Cats?
No, I don't think it did.
Jury's still out.
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right, and I love that documentary. And what I my favorite story, and I've heard him tell it so many times, and yet every time he tells it on a podcast or on anything, he tells the story of how he found Bender. And how he made the voice
amazing
that he put these actual people that he knew that he were from his hometown and his teacher. And he's told it on Rob Paulson's podcast. He's told it on other podcasts. He tells it in this documentary. And every time I love the story because he does one voice, he does another voice, and he says, and then you just mix them. And he does it. And my brain goes, what do you mean you just mix them? It's just an easy thing to do.
Like a bartender, just pour them together. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's astonishing.
Well, the craziest, on the topic of impossible mixtures, the go-to example, and I think they mention it in I Know That Voice, but Mel Blanc as did all of the Looney Tunes. And in the Duck Season, Rabbit Season episode, Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny dress up as each other and do impressions of one another, but they're both voiced by him.
Yeah.
And the mind-numbing thing is that Daffy Duck's impression of Bugs Bunny is not just Bugs Bunny's voice. It's Daffy Duck plus 30% Bugs Bunny, and reverse those ratios, and you've got Bugs Bunny's performance. So he had to do 4 very subtly different things, and it's incredible. It's utterly mind-bending, but that's a certain type of mastery, and it's one that some people dedicate their entire lives to. And when you talk to them, oftentimes they are the ones who listened to the radio shows as kids and parroted back everything they heard. And it's just mastery. It's so much practice, so much work.
For sure. Yeah, totally. There's this idea a lot online that things that you can't tangibly see are easier. And I know that's not true, especially for voice acting. Yeah. But there's this idea that, voice acting can't be that hard. You don't even have to get in front of a camera. And it's it's just not true. It's this, I've heard this about podcasting too. Everyone's podcasting, you're just talking to a mic and then you put it out. That's fine. There's no work involved in that. And it's I'd say it's hard work. I'd say it's work I like doing, but I would never say it's easy. I think things come easy to people. I think producing and recording podcasts for me comes easily to me, but doesn't mean the act of getting it done is easy. It's still a challenge,
Well, I think there's a passion there fueling it, right? I think we both are very passionate about these intangible projects, and intangible things can also be utterly soul crushing because failure is hard to define. Right. It is hard to define what it means to be, I know that we know what a bad performance is when we hear it. You're watching a show or you see an actor on TV and you go, that's not really landing for me. We know what that is. But if you had to, under a microscope, examine the exact points at which that person failed, it's really hard. When a structure collapses, you're it's bad riveting.
Right.
Yeah, the metal rusted. Easy. We've diagnosed the issue. But when it comes to the less tangible things, failure is so much harder to define, and thus it's so much easier to say, wow, I didn't do great at that, and you know what? It's because I have no worth as a human. Which is it's brutal, but it's every person I talk to in this industry deals with some level of that, and imposter syndrome, because you can't go and look at the statue you built. You just have these waveforms that don't mean anything. It's all abstractions. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every day I wake up and I go, is today the day? Is today the day everyone figures out that I'm a fraud and that I'm not worth their time and that they shouldn't talk to me? Is today that day? It could be. And then I go to bed going, got him again. They haven't figured me out.
Got him. Pranked. Whole day pranked.
While we're talking about podcasting a little bit, though, I do want to talk about your involvement with Lore Party, a podcast that I adore and that are friends of the Certain Point of View podcast network, and the two major projects I know you work on, which is the core podcast Lore Party, and now the more recent endeavor. For some reason, you and Abu Zafar, who I also adore, are taking on everything Dune related in anticipation for the eventual release of the Dune movie, whenever that's going to happen.
You know, it started a year ago, and Abu texted me and said, "Hey, do you want to do a Dune podcast?" And I thought, man, I should probably read it before I say yes. And then I ignored that thought, said yes, and then frantically read the 6 books by Frank Herbert. But it has been such a journey. Lore Party, right, amazing work, and was one of my first experiences hosting regularly kind of a podcast. And I got to see some of the production side of things. You know, I would listen in on some editing processes, and I would help a little bit with scripts and stuff like that, you know, researching episodes, deciding on deadlines, things like that. But with Jabbar, it's really been Abu and me kind of building it. And, you know, we're at this point, this is going to change very soon. But at this point, we have the most ratings and the highest rating of any Dune-related podcast, which it's not a huge victory because there's only like 8.
Sure.
But still, it's having built it from the ground up and having seen every moving cog of the project go into place and refining it and kind of obsessing over every little detail and seeing that yield a product that I'm really genuinely proud of, it's definitely been a very different experience. And I did not think 5 years ago I'm going to have a year of production experience coming out of a global pandemic. Like, it's unbelievable on a couple of levels, but it's been so much fun, and I am so proud of the work we've done. Also, doesn't Abu have the greatest voice?
Such a great voice, and like,
it's so
great. And it's funny, I met Abu, I think my co-host on Reignite had met him first through some mutual circles, and because we're all Mass Effect nerds. But I remember the first time Abu came on the podcast, and I was just like, man, he's got the best voice. And like,
it's so good.
Also, what I love about Abu is he's just effortlessly charming. Like, it's not like he's putting on an act. It's not like he's trying really hard. Not that I can tell anyway. It's just kind of like he's just effortlessly charming, especially on camera too. The couple of on camera things I've seen him do, like, it comes so easy for him, and I love it. I adore it, and I love the work. I love that y'all had my co-host Frankie Bradley Lestrange on your Garrus episode of Lore Party, and that you guys have done a lot of really cool stuff over at Lore Party. I remember when you nonchalantly released your Yuri Lowenthal episode, and like knowing the nerd that Lawrence is for Spider-Man, because we've talked about it a bunch. I just messaged him. I DM'd him on Discord. It's like, what? He's like, I know.
Yeah.
It was so cool. Who also seemed like genuinely the sweetest human, Yuri Lowenthal, who's also an incredible voice actor who now I can't read, like, I call it the Mark Hamill effect. What I mean by the Mark Hamill effect is that I can't read anything with the Joker in it, a novel, a comic. If I read anything with the Joker in it, I hear Mark Hamill's voice. It's the default voice for the Joker for
100%,
me. And like, I'm starting to get that now with Yuri Lowenthal. Like, I was rereading some Spider-Man comics the other day, and I was hearing his voice. I was like, he wiggled his way in, because there've been a lot of people to do Spider-Man's voice, and like, it's really cool. And that happens with comic book characters, especially the ones I tend to gravitate towards the most. Like, I don't know about for you, but for me, the DC cartoons, so Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Justice League, like that changed my life when it came to acknowledging voice actors and liking comic book materials.
Again, all of that hit so far before I thought about any of this. I watched them. I love them. Don't get me wrong. Like, I remember I was at that perfect age of adolescence when Batman Beyond came out. And I was like, this is the coolest thing that has ever happened on this planet. And looking back, I'm like, wow, that was at that time in my life, huh? Cool. But it has been a joy to become, basically it's been a joy to get to your level, Matt, in like learning about these actors and the people who brought all of that stuff to life. I mean, the other crazy mind-bending thing that comes to mind, like, did you ever watch the Jackie Chan animated feature, the Jackie Chan animated cartoon?
Yeah, I loved it.
So the voice actor who voices Jackie Chan is James C.
Mm-hmm.
He is the voice of the cabbage merchant from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No way.
He is. My cabbages. And also, I just played on stream recently, I played Final Fantasy VII Remake because I have a couple of friends in it. And I was like, oh man, I love whoever's voicing Hojo, arguably one of the biggest villains in the game. And it's him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, Cabbage Merchant took a dark turn. He went from like selling cabbages to genetically engineering monsters. Oh no. Who hurt you, Cabbage Merchant?
Yeah.
Like,
that's like recently I broke people's brains by saying, the new Superman on the Superman and Lois show? I've been telling my friends, I was like, yeah, that's also Sephiroth. Same guy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And like that also blows my mind. Like, because Sephiroth, especially since he's kind of aping the Advent Children performance, he's still putting his own spin on it. But like the dark and brooding tone of that voice is definitely similar to Advent Children.
Oh yeah.
And it's just for that same person to be Superman is so wild. Like the range of voice actors, especially if you don't know, like Mark Hamill is often some level of Mark Hamill in most of his stuff,
right? Especially
since a lot of the characters he's voiced since the Joker tend to be similar to the Joker. My favorite thing is there was a recent animated short where the Joker kidnaps Mark Hamill with the help of the toy maker.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think it's the toy maker. And like these are characters that Mark Hamill has all played, and so it's Mark Hamill playing Mark Hamill, playing the toy man or toy maker, and the Joker, and like fighting. And then I think he's rescued by maybe Swamp Thing, who is also his voice or something.
Oh my
like
God.
It was wild. It was great, and it was so good. And I think Mark Hamill saved himself or like stalled by imitating their voices. Like it was just the most meta, stupid thing. It's the best. I'm glad you brought up streaming though, because that's something that I know both of us have gotten. I've been doing it a little while longer, I think, but we both definitely started doing it more in quarantine because we're home more.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
Briefly, I want to recommend that everyone go to Leo's channel. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and you've played it, there's a clip of Leo reacting to Cloud in the dress for the first time when Tifa recognizes Cloud. And if you haven't seen it, it's this moment where Cloud has cross-dressed to sneak into this Lech's mansion to try and get close to his friend who's been kidnapped or stuck there. He's not quite sure, with the help of Aerith, who is also getting dressed up. And once Tifa recognizes it's you, Cloud's like, yes, I know, I killed it, move on. And it's just the joy in Liam's face when he realized, like, it's such a great gaming moment.
Yeah, it really is. It's so perfect. I have such regret. Streaming was something that I did and started to do and still do, 2 days a week. Basically because I realized maybe about a year and a half ago, I've been working in video game voiceover now for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I don't have time to play games anymore because I'm recording for games and because I'm busy with all of the other elements of like running a small business and now producing a podcast and doing everything else that I do. Like I learned how to embroider. Like,
nice.
Why did I do that? That's so much time. But it was fun. Anyway, point is, with streaming, it was an opportunity not only to get more comfortable with being on camera, because I know that in this digital era, people are eager to, get your voice on file, but also like I was asked to stream for one of the video games that I voiced in, and I was like, wow, I don't want to do this with no practice, So I streamed for a couple weeks and realized this might be a good opportunity to finally play games again. And if I have these great moments, or if I have these opportunities where, someone delivers an incredible delivery or an incredible performance that the average person might not even notice and might just feel the feelings, I can swoop in and ruin the feelings with like a crazy intellectual breakdown, but really also allowing people to peek a little bit behind the curtain, because so much of it is made to trick you into thinking these are real people in these real circumstances. But when you hear your character out of breath because you used up your stamina bar, that's a person in a booth breathing hard by themselves. Yep. Sometimes with an engineer, and sometimes with like 5 people in Poland watching over webcam, and you're just sweating and breathing hard for these Polish men. And that's your day. That's your job, that moment. And that is so surreal and so weird. I wanted to be able to tell people about that and talk a little bit about it and be just an open book for people. But then naturally, I also suddenly was open to these incredible experiences of like, when I talked about playing games in 1996, Final Fantasy VII was one of my first games that I ever really like loved.
Yeah.
And was like obsessed with, digging Vincent Valentine out of that coffin in the optional mansion. I'm like, this is the coolest man who's ever lived. Yep. He's so beautiful. He's so cool. And then in Advent Children, he has this incredible voice. I'm so sorry, I don't know who voiced him.
It's Stephen Bloom.
And is it? It's not Steve Bloom.
It is. In Advent Children, it is Stephen Bloom, and I'm hoping that he'll do it again in remake.
How dare you?
But like, I think that they recast just about everybody for remake, and so I hope they bring Stephen back because he'd be the only one they brought back. But yeah, that's Stephen Bloom in Advent Children.
See, again, this is the sort of thing I would have known if I had been voice acting when Advent Children came back. But in any case, yes, I loved Final Fantasy VII Remake, and to get to experience all of that on camera also then gave me an opportunity to understand myself more as someone who might appear on camera, which is valuable as, someone who has now had to do some interviews and has now had to sometimes appear in front of a camera.
Yeah, and I want to get back to your streaming in a sec, but I have 2 anecdotes. One, you talked about panting in a sound booth. My favorite YouTube clip to send people who don't understand voice acting is here is Hugh Jackman doing ADR for the X-Men movies.
Oh,
have you seen this?
Yeah.
And it's just
it
him
actually
with
happened.
fake claws on in regular clothes in a booth making those noises. And it's wild because his muscles are tense, veins bulging, like he's doing it. It's not you don't just use your voice when you're doing that kind of stuff. He's the full body, and it's awesome.
Like the headphones fall off his head a little bit. That was recorded at Hyperbolic Audio in New York, which is where I recorded my commercial demo.
That's awesome.
And I know that because I saw D. Bradley Baker teach a class in Manhattan, and the head of Hyperbolic Audio was there, and he kind of nonchalantly was like, oh yeah, you've all probably seen that video of Hugh Jackman. That was like 2 rooms over. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's an incredible video. I recommend it for everybody. Also look up videos of Goku, Sean Schimmel as Goku. There's some really superb, especially in the last like 4 or 5 years, there's some really great videos of Sean Schimmel in the booth voicing Goku, and you see, like, when he's roaring or when he's screaming, it is not, you're so right, Matt, it's not just this mental vocal exercise. He's like clenching his fists, and you can feel through the video, you can see he's tight, his stomach is tight, he has all of this tension, and you can feel the tension as he's delivering these lines, because that's what you have to do. The voice lives so much in the body and so much everywhere other than the voice that it's necessary. And then you have to learn how to not make a ton of sound as you wrestle against the booth and accidentally punch the microphone and all that good stuff.
I accidentally hit my microphone so much just talking on podcasts. I can't even imagine what it's like as a voice actor trying to flail around and stay coherent.
It's the worst. So many takes, like, thwump, fuck, It's the worst.
Another thing I wanted to mention is while we were talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake and streamers, the voice actress who booked Aerith. Yeah. I don't know what I've played the whole game. I think they call her Aerith in the game, but like just the deprogram. Look, all right. For those who don't play video games, there was this whole argument that even though it was spelled Aerith, it was pronounced Aerith. I think they finally made it officially spelled Aerith in the new game. But like, it's just my brain can't let go of it. It's the same like Mako. They keep calling it Mako in the game, and I'm like, but it's Mako. And it's just
same.
But the voice actress who played Aerith, whose name escapes me now, she didn't get to see any of the game. She did the voice acting. She had, I think, reference photos and stuff, but like she didn't get to play any build of the game in process. So she never saw her her work live finished. So they gave her, I'm pretty sure, a review code or whatever for her stream so she could stream it. And there's this great clip of her hearing her voice for the first time in the game when Cloud first meets her. And just crying, just losing it, because that's her voice in the game she's playing. And it's just such a beautiful moment being, for me as a voice actor nerd, but also someone who grew up with these games, like to see the voice of a character I've loved since I was a child get just as worked up as I am for seeing this character for the first time for a whole other set of reasons is just wild.
Yeah. Well, I can't describe to you how little you see sometimes, like I'm recording a game right now. And I was given actual, like, for acting purposes footage of cutscenes. And it blew my mind because in the past, I record the audio and, I've recorded now 3 full television series, a feature-length movie, and like 2 or 3 video games that I've seen nothing of. And the truth of the matter is, people ask me, is it weird? Like, oh, I hate hearing myself. I hate hearing recordings of myself, right? Like, I would love to be a voice actor, but I hate hearing recordings of myself. And though I have a certain type of voice, and though I've gotten compliments for a lot of my life around my voice, it doesn't change the fact that I hated hearing myself recorded for a long time. But the truth of the matter is, when you're playing the game, like when I'm looking at the final game, when I'm playing Summer and Mara, right? I remember being in the booth going, ooh, and then hitting stop and going, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. That sounded so dumb. It's so dumb. And then you hear it with the background music, with the player's footsteps as they're running in, and you hear it with all of the other sound effects. And it's this beautiful part of a tapestry that you can't even begin to picture when you're in the booth. Also, often, like 8 months prior to the thing happening. So it's really, I totally get it. And I love that clip. And I second you 100%. I think you can just Google Aerith voice actor, Twitch, and you'll see the clip. It's heartbreaking because it's so sweet and she's so happy, and she talks about it on that stream. Like, she's like, I remember delivering that, but it's so much better than I could have ever imagined. And you can like watch this dream come true. And that's so rare. And it's one of the things I love about Twitch is you get to see, I follow another streamer, Greg Chun. Do you know Greg Chun?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the voice of Ike in Super Smash Brothers. If anybody out there in listener land has played Super Smash Brothers. And he's in Final Fantasy VII Remake as Scotch, and he's a bunch of characters. He's superb, and he streams, and it's been so much fun to be able to hop into his streams, watch him playing these games, talk a little bit about it, ask him questions. There's a sort of immediacy there that really, it's just wonderful. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but it's just I'm marveling at the gift that is this modern era of technology.
For sure. I mean, streaming, I was someone who grew up, like, I ultimately always want to be playing the game, but I'm not a person who hated watching other people play games, especially horror games. Like,
oh, yeah.
My best friend, Matt Caron, and I grew up playing games together a lot, and he notoriously didn't really like watching. He liked taking turns or playing. And, like, I, to this day, cannot play a lot of horror games. You witnessed firsthand me cowardly getting my way through the first two Dead Space games. The third one I never finished because it's not a good game. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, it's just not. I couldn't do it. But those first two games were so much fun to stream because I am a coward by nature. But having you and Kerfiggle and a bunch of other folks in chat who knew the games, but not revealing anything, being just kind of giddy to be a part of the moment, made it so much more fun to do that. But like I grew up playing Resident Evil 2 with my friend Matt, and like every time Mr. X came barreling through the door, we'd jump 10 feet in the air. But the experience was fun and less scary because we were sharing it. And Twitch, I feel like, translates that so well. And like what I love about watching you stream is not just your voice, not just your relation to the voice acting community and that experience, but also your genuine joy or annoyance at things from the games that I relate to, you know, whether it's a thing that you died on that you shouldn't have, or like a boss that's difficult, or a moment that's really tough. Like I love that how that emotion is translated through Twitch so well. Like you did a incredible episode of Side Quests about Shadow of the Colossus. An incredible game. And I love that episode of Side Quests on Fun and Games, which you can find at certainpov.com, plug. But your episode inspired me to finally play it on stream. And it was the remake version for the PS4. And like getting to see you react in chat to me reacting to the awe of this game and the scope of this game. Like that final boss fight, for those who don't know, Shadow of the Colossus is a game where the whole story, there's not a lot of dialogue, and the whole story is this young boy slaying these giant beasts and monsters to save a young woman. The final, and so you always have to climb and scale these giant creatures, hitting their weak points to defeat them. The final boss is a fortress with a creature inside. And it was just the most mind-blowing, and this was on the PS2 originally, the most mind-blowing piece of video game technology I'd ever seen. Because the idea that you would climb something, like the whole boss battle is the stage, is just wild to me.
I mean, again, that fight starts, and you go, I wonder where on that castle the monster is. And then the castle shoots a laser at you.
Like, what?
And you go, oh, it's a laser cannon castle monster, naturally. And the sweeping orchestral score, again, I'm not going to like reprise my Fun and Games podcast episode, but that fight really is incredible. And I remember those moments of like almost getting shaken off its head, you know, and you're holding on with your fingertips to this, you know, you're 200 feet in the air, clinging to the head of this castle laser shooting monster. And the music and the rain and the lightning and the thunder, it's like it really is incredible, and totally in contrast to most of the game, which is being lost looking for the monsters.
Time. I felt like every time you tuned in, I was like, where do I go? I don't understand. And like,
where the fuck am I?
The worst was the horse controls. I love that horse. I love that awesome, stupid horse. But the controlling that like controlling horses in like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Ghost of Tsushima and like all these games, modern games on the PS4 that have had horse controls are pretty good and pretty intuitive. And usually if you can't steer, like the horse will fall over and you'll get back up, whatever. This though, no, it's just like the horse is going to go right for a cliff. Sometimes it'll stop short and throw you off. Like it didn't matter. Like this horse went where it wanted. You couldn't guide the damn thing.
You know, I thought about it a lot because I did research for your episode, and the game developers were talking about how they wanted it to be you are controlling aggro on... Oh, no, aggro's the horse. You are controlling Wander on the back of aggro, versus a lot of video games, as soon as your character mounts the horse, you're just controlling the horse with like a player character backpack. Like you are now, you know, Arthur Morgan backpack on a horse character. And that subtle difference of you tell the horse to go left. If you're controlling the horse, you just go left. If you tell the horse to go left and you're the human on top of the horse, well, if you've ever ridden a horse in real life, they don't always listen, and it is frustrating. So they captured that perfectly.
True, they did. This long-winded reminiscing and story trading was to bring back to the Twitch streaming. Like, I wanted to know, as someone who loves games and plays games, like, were there any hurdles to streaming for you? Like, for me, I've had some hurdles recently. Like I love the Yakuza series. I've been obsessed with it. I'm 3 games in so far, 4 games technically, because I played 0 as well. And I'm loving it. But I tried to stream the remake of the second game, and I just didn't have fun the entire time. But the minute I played it off stream, I was like, this is great. I'm having fun. And I realized it's just certain things engage me in a way that I can't be on live while playing. It's just my brain, the chemistry doesn't work out. Have there been any games that like you were so eager to stream and then you got on stream with them and you're like, this isn't the right fit?
You know, it's funny because there's sort of a 2-pronged issue here. Like when Last of Us 2 came out, I thought I'm going to, because at that point I had started streaming. I thought, of course I need to play this on stream. I mean, this is going to be like top tier voice acting, really voice acting in a category of quality that you almost never see. What an opportunity. And I'm sure lots of incredible reactions. But I also knew that I would be affected very visibly and very unpredictably by the game because of the way that the first game went. And I am constantly thinking about what I have control over regarding my brand as Leo Wiggins, the voice actor. And the footage that ends up on the internet is something that reflects on the brand. And although I have seen prominent streamers play games and like break down crying or like throw a controller angrily or like be affected to that point of losing control, and I haven't thought any less of them as people, and I haven't thought any less of them as a business, I just frankly haven't found that place of vulnerability yet in the public eye to be like, you know what? I am cool to like openly weep on stream. And so when Last of Us 2 came out, I played it off stream. Sure enough, I like, wept to the core of my being like 4 times. And I was glad that I hadn't played it on stream. And then the other side of it is just, I think the type of streaming that I enjoy doing is kind of commentary, reactions, jokes, that sort of thing. And certain games that I know make really good streaming games, like, Minecraft or because a lot of people put on streams just to have in the background. I just don't find myself vibing with that because there's only so much you can comment on when it comes to like, oh, another creeper blew me up. Great. Or wow, this Roblox, I don't know. I've never played Roblox, but I don't know. It's that 2-pronged challenge of like, I am still too cognizant of how I'm perceived to play certain types of games, in the public eye. And then secondarily, because it's a crazy level of vulnerability to be like, hey guys, watch me get to a place emotionally that like a dozen people in the world have ever seen me in. And then secondarily, I think it's just, there are certain games that I very much enjoy playing, but I enjoy like killing time in, and I just don't think that makes good content. But I don't even know where that judgment comes from, because that's not, I don't know. Maybe it's just not the kind of streams that I watch. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like it's got to come from personal taste to a degree. I mean, as far as The Last of Us 2 is concerned, so I didn't play it. I played it for the first time a few months ago, and I loved the first one. Yeah. And I wanted to play the second one, but with the pandemic last year, and as the listeners know, my home caught fire last year, and so like I just been through a lot of stuff, and I was like, do I want to play a game about an endless apocalypse where I know things are going to happen? I think I'll pass. And then so I felt I was finally comfortable and felt like I was in a good enough place to take it on. And that said, and for anyone listening right now who's not played The Last of Us 2, I think there's been enough time that I can spoil something here to share a moment with Leo. However, I'm going to keep it brief. So if you don't want to hear the spoiler, skip about a minute ahead and we'll be past it. But I want to take a moment. Like, I could have never streamed this game because I had an inkling that Joel would die. Like, it just seemed like it was the natural course because Ellie is the main character now. However, when that scene happens and he is killed, it was so brutally violent. And it was the last thing I did that night before I turned the game off because I had to go to bed. Like, my spouse saw I was visibly affected by it, and she was in a great mood. Something had happened. We were talking, and like I was a mess. It ruined me. And I couldn't imagine reacting to that on stream because I was speechless. Because even though I knew it was going to happen, the fact that Abby like brutally beats him with that golf club while Ellie's watching and screaming. And Ashley Johnson is an incredible actress, so you're feeling every moment. Like, I agree with you. I could have never done that on stream.
When he intervenes at the dance party, and this is like way late in the game, we're seeing this as a flashback. He intervenes in the party, and she goes, "I didn't ask for your help," or something like that, and then storms off. I thought that's the last thing she ever said to him. And I had to stop playing because I had to take a good, 15 minutes to just kneel on the floor crying. It was brutal. But, I mean, such is the mastery of those actors and the writing and the way that those characters are built. I mean, with Joel's death early on in the game, it's more a byproduct of how we feel about him after playing the first game. But still, it's, God, Ashley Johnson delivered such a soul-stirring performance in that game. It was incredible.
The whole cast is unbelievable. And I knew going into that game, the first game, I don't love the combat in the first game. I don't love the stealth in the first game. I don't mind it, but I play it on easy because I'm not very good at it. I love the story, though. The story in the first game is what sells that game. And the same thing for the second game. Although I would argue the combat was better, I thought I had a better handle on it, at least. There were still moments where I wanted to throw the controller, but the acting is so good. And the structure of the game is so good. Because the first time you play Abby, I'm just like, oh, I'm playing another character, and then everything happens.
Right.
And then they still make you sit for half the game with that character. And and then the stuff they make you do as Ellie, and because you've done those terrible things as Ellie, and then go back and play it from Abby's perspective. The part that I cried, because I have trouble with this in games, is any animal harm that's not fantasy animals. The first time you meet Alice the dog, I paused the game and just wept because I already knew what happened. It's just it's such. This is why I like streaming games, but I don't think I could ever stream that game. And I think I think it's part because I'm an emotional person too. The Mass Effect Legendary Edition is coming out. I'm really excited. Mass Effect is one of my favorite series of all time. I'm not going to stream the Legendary Edition the first time I play it. I'll stream it eventually because I have a brand, after all, to uphold as a Mass Effect obsessive. But the first time I play the Legendary Edition, I'm going to be emotional because it's going to be better graphics. They're not remaking the games, but it's still going to be a, modern gen version of something I've loved that has been showing its age for the last few years that I still continue to play. And so I know I'm going to get strangely emotional about things that people are going to be like, Matt, why are you crying? It's just the opening of the game. It's just some music. I don't understand. It's I want to have those moments for myself and then share them with my community. And I'll probably still get those emotional moments even on a second and third playthrough. But I think it's important to know where your boundaries are as a streamer. And also, I guess, ultimately, why it's fun for you, right? If you're not having fun playing the game you're playing, why would you stream it, right?
That's definitely important. I want to look back on the time I've invested, because the last thing in the world that I wanted to do, I spent a lot of time as a kid making art, and I got my degree in art, and so I very firsthand have that visceral sensation of doing something you like at someone else's expectations to the point of no longer liking it.
Yep.
And the idea of finally making time to play video games that had voice acting in them, to get a chance to start learning these other voice actors and these different voice directors who are doing incredible work in these different studios and styles of delivery that maybe I haven't been as familiar with recently. The idea of that ever turning sour and ever either getting in the way of the rest of my life, or again, feeling like an obligation, or feeling like it was in some way negatively affecting pretty much any other part of my life. It was a very calculated decision to stream what and when I do, and I think it'll always have to be. But luckily, there are so many games to play, and there's incredible work being done by so many. I'm playing 13 Sentinels right now. I'm about to.
It's been on my list for a while. I've heard incredible things about it.
Lord, it's so good. And I will say, for anybody who goes, yeah, let's play that. Just don't learn anything about it.
Yep.
just play it, because it's incredible, and the voice acting's amazing. And it's been kind of fun to have my time to play, on stream, and to finish a stream and go, well, now I have to wait, 2 days until I can play again. And to know that on some level, like, I have viewers who are like invested in the story right alongside me. And exactly to your point earlier, there is a sense of sharing, right? It's not exactly switching controllers and going, okay, now you take a turn, but it's something incredible happens. And then I look at chat and it's just, what? And like people losing their minds, all caps, and it feels so validating, especially in this year of, living alone and not being around other people. It's, streaming's such an interesting challenge, but it can give so much.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I've been streaming Hades lately, which I love.
Great. Oh my God.
For a whole host of reasons. The voice acting's great. Of course, it's
so
super
good.
giant. They always do amazing voice acting, and thirsting after gods, because who doesn't love a sexy god? But like this past Sunday, as of when we're recording, I had my first clear. I hadn't cleared it yet. I kept dying. And then within recent weeks had finally gotten to the final boss, and I had folks on stream when I got the final clear, and they went nuts in chat. They were so, because they knew I'd been hitting my head against the wall, and I barely beat it. I had 5. Zagreus had 5 health left when I beat. And
God.
It was just like, oh. Like, there's something satisfying about that like I would have still reacted the same way had I probably done it offline, but like it drove me, I think, to do it because I had people watching and there was this interaction. Talking about being stuck at home this past year, like I'm very lucky and blessed and thankful to be one of Fuser's featured streamers. And for the last few weeks, I've been hosted on their Twitch channel, and I've been streaming Fuser, which I love. As someone who's been a DJ for a long time, but has not done a live event in over a year. And I think it had been a while since before the pandemic also, just because doing those streams every week have made me feel like I'm in front of a crowd again, or I'm around people, or I'm with an audience in a way.
Oh, that's awesome.
That like regular streaming gives me, but not on the same level. Like people are making requests. They're telling me to do like put the Numa Numa song with All Star with whatever, and like creating crazy cursed concoctions together. Like it's just so much fun. And I agree with you. I think also I hit a point in my adult life, and I have to imagine you're in the same place, where I don't have enough time to do anything I don't like. If there's a show I'm not enjoying, I stop watching it. If there's a game I'm not enjoying, I stop watching it. If there is a movie that I'm not enjoying, unless I'm watching it with my spouse and we just want to see it through, I stop watching it.
Right.
We are living in a time only for a few more hours, I think, of pre-Snyder Cut. And like, I don't want to talk about the logistics of it, but it's 4 hours. I'm going to watch it because I want to like a Justice League something, right? Like I ultimately like these characters. But if I get 2 hours in and I'm not invested, I'm turning that damn thing off. I have plenty of other things I could do for 2 more hours that'll be way more valuable.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the joy of like running multiple businesses, that at any given time there's 7 things I should be doing?
Yeah.
And I don't owe anybody anything.
Nope.
I don't owe, a 5-hour movie 5 hours of attention. And I want to respect and honor the work that those people did, but not everything's for everybody. And I don't need to pretend to be every person's audience. I'll say very quickly, as exactly to your point about beating Hades, I played Sekiro on stream. And I was getting to the point where I was dying casually enough that I wanted to up the ante. So I said, okay, every time I die, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do 10 push-ups. And
oh no,
we're going to see how long this goes. And I got to one of the hardest bosses in the game, probably he's probably 4, like rank 4. And I'm fighting him, and I'm getting up to like 28 deaths, 29 deaths. And as I'm doing my push-ups each time, I'm like feeling my body start to like stop. And I'm like, okay, I need to win soon because I can't do. And people in chat had started doing push-ups with me. So when I would die, they'd be like, come on, like so soon. And I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. Okay, I'm going to take a break and farm some, whatever, medallions or whatever. And beating the boss, it's another clip that I have that I'm so happy to have, because it's a moment where I see in myself a level of relief and achievement and accomplishment that I felt in the moment.
Right.
And like, I say at one point, I'm like, I'm so happy I'm going to throw up. It was, I like say that out loud. It was such a genuine expression at the time. And now I can look back on it, clear-minded and go, wow, games got me there. Like,
Yeah.
I had that experience because of games and because of chat. And yeah, so dumb, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the stupid things that games make us do. I'm with you on that. I like those kind of moments. I've participated in Extra Life every year for many years, which is a gaming charity for children's hospitals, where you play video games for 24. Well, you play any game. It can be video games for 24 hours straight, with acceptable meal and bathroom breaks, to raise money for children's hospital of your choice. And I do it as long as I'm able-bodied. I always do it. And like every year it gets harder. And like the first couple of years I did it, I had 1 or 2 viewers. Not a lot of people were watching. I wasn't streaming that long. But like this past year, those final hours, I had folks watching, and like it became a real struggle to keep those eyes open. Like I started playing Mass Effect. Yeah. I think it was Mass Effect 2, because that's currently where we were at with Reignite. And so like I was just playing and doing side missions and like just trying to keep my eyes open. And it was like, in my head, I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I do every year, but it's worth it. And I mean, I ended up raising over $1,100, and it's amazing. Just awesome. But like, it's one of those moments where you look back at the clips and go, oh boy, woof.
Right.
Like, what was I thinking? Well, it's here now. Everyone can see it. There you go.
Hopefully people are understanding.
Right, exactly. I mean, if people think I'm an ass, it's also valid. So, I can't really argue there. Leo, this has been a delight. Thank you so much for being on my show. Before I have you do our sign off and we wrap up, why don't you tell folks where they can find you on the internet and find what you do on the internet? Yeah.
So I'm on almost every platform. I'm at Leo Wiggins VO. VO stands for voiceover. So Leo Wiggins VO. I'm on Twitter. I'm on the Instagrams. I've technically opened TikTok, although you'll never see me post anything. I'm on IMDb. I've got a homepage. I'm on Twitch. Again, it's twitch.tv/Leo Wiggins VO. And I'm all over the place. You can find me. Literally, you can just Google Leo Wiggins, and I'm the only thing that comes up, other than pictures of Robert Downey Jr. from 1988, because he played a character named Leo Wiggins.
Really?
Johnny B. Good.
God. That's amazing.
And it was a proud moment for me when I Googled my name on incognito, and I came up before these like pictures of young Robert Downey Jr. I was like, hey, my search engine optimization is coming up good. I'm finally beating a 45-year-old movie. Like,
the internet.
It's about
the
time.
Internet's a strange place.
But that's. I also had when I first realized that, I had the dumbest thought. I thought, my parents in 1990 named me Leo Wiggins, and they didn't even Google search my name first to make sure. And I got about halfway through the thought before I realized, and just started hating myself for the fallacy of, why didn't they Google it? It was the 1940s. Anyway, that's where I am on the internet.
Well, again, thank you so much. I've loved collaborating with you over the years, and I hope we collaborate more. I have not honestly read or watched any Dune other than, of course, the David Lynch classic, because everyone's seen Sting in a thong. You gotta. It's just required.
You gotta.
I should share with you before we go that I have a friend named Iris Explosion, who's a burlesque performer in New York, who does an act as Sting from that movie, as that version of Sting.
Oh,
and she,
that's great.
You know that crazy eye look that he has the whole time? She mastered that look. And it's the best, most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I don't know if there's any video of it, because not all of our acts have video. If I can find it, I will send it to you in a boo, but it is the best thing. It's just, it's that intensity that he does in the movie the whole time in the act. It's great. While she's getting naked. It's amazing.
Oh my God. we had a recent episode, and one of our guests, Elaine, mentioned, I wonder who's going to play Sting's character in the upcoming Denis Villeneuve movie. And Abu, without a second's hesitation, went, it's still Sting. And the idea of, like, how old is he now? He's in his 70s?
Gotta be. I don't know.
Something like that. Just the idea of him coming out in the thong with the intense look on his face, like, I'm 15, was like the funniest thing to me. But that's also a niche of humor that maybe I'm particularly positioned to enjoy. Anyway, that's superb. I hope that the shows start up again soon. That'd be great to see.
Yeah, totally. But that said, again, thank you for being on the show.
Totally.
Before we go, I have a saying on the show, which is music is life and life is good. It's this idea that it was born out of my music podcast that's now in indefinite hiatus, which is a nice way of saying it's dead, but I don't want to admit it. It's been like 5 years. Like it's
always
done.
there waiting.
Always there waiting. But it was born of that show and this idea that as long as you're making art, as long as you're doing something, as long as you're making something, life isn't that bad, even at its worst. And so I always have every guest say that. So if you could sign us off by saying music is life and life is good, we'll call it a day.
All right. Music is life and life is good.
That's it for this episode of CPOV Autographs. Our theme music is by Michael Kill. Our logo was designed by Case Aiken and Joey Amons. If you liked the show, please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us reach more listeners. Questions, comments, or guest recommendations? Email mr.nat.storm@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at CPOV Autographs. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey everyone, I'm Abu.
And I'm Leo.
And we're here to tell you about Jabbar, our brand new podcast all about Dune.
Jabbar is your guide to Frank Herbert's massive sci-fi universe. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in everything from Frank's iconic novels to the adaptations on film and TV.
And here's the thing. We do spoiler-filled deep dives as well as introductory non-spoiler episodes. So there's something for everyone.
Look, Dune is complicated. There are crazy words like mentats, like Tleilaxu, and of course, Jabbar.
Our goal is to help you understand these words and many more that we can't pronounce.
It's a theme. So find Jabbar on your favorite podcast platform. We can't wait to share our love of the Dune universe, and we'll see you on the golden path.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.